we had 1,122 kids. The next year, if you all remember, we were online or in pods or having partial days here at the high school in a funky schedule. And we gained during that year 12 students. The next year, when we were masked for full day, we lost 31 students. My hunch would be most of them went to homeschooling during that time because they didn't want their child in a mask. But then the next year, and I put normal in quotes, you can't quite see it, but normal in quotes for that next year, we gained 48 students. So not only did we get 31 students back, but we got more than that, right? I just find this, like, now that we have these actuals from the COVID years in terms of enrollment, they're fascinating. So really from the year 2019-20 to now, our historical change, while there have obviously been fluxes, has changed from -3 students, which is a good thing. It means that we're relatively a stable community in terms of students.
And these are real people. It's not like the weighted stuff.
No, these are not weighted. Thank you, Tim, for that clarification. No, these are kids in seats.
Okay.
This next slide is also particularly fascinating for me. So this is where you can all ooh and ah, okay? What we did was we took the school year, 2025-26, and then I looked at the NESDEC report for the Montpelier births. The Roxbury is too small, so there's no reporting on Roxbury births, but Montpelier births 5 years prior from that year, okay? So 2025-26, the year we're in right now, so 2020, 2021, these are our current kindergartners, right? There's 62 births that year in 2020-21. There are 62 kindergartners. Yeah. And then the next year, there were also 62 births. So that's like our kindergarten numbers now. But then take a look at this. The year coming out of seclusion with COVID, right? This is the year we masked. We're going to have a kindergarten class of almost 80 kids. Right? A significant jump in kids, more than we have had in quite a long time. That's 78 kids right there. Okay. And then the year following that, when nobody's masking, all that kind of stuff, we've come out of seclusion, pretty normal stuff. We have 46 births in Montpelier. Just 46. I find this absolutely fascinating. There's your chance, Tim. Is this fascinating or not? Right? Well, I wonder. Thank you, Scott. Thank you.
I wonder why, though, if the births stayed the same from the first year to the next year, they are projecting we will lose 20 kids of enrollment.
Those are I'm not sure. Well, this is just our kindergarten class, right? So you don't know the
graduating senior
who's graduating.
I
the
see.
kids are graduating.
I see.
All that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
Is the difference column supposed to be the row before minus the row after?
Can you say?
Yeah. Yes, it
Is
is. The difference column is that K through 12 row. You're just subtracting from one row to the next.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or K through 12 column.
I guess that there's something with the 2026, 27 line. Guess it should be 1,000 or 9. What is it? 100, 1,118 minus 20. So 1,099.
That's what it is.
Oh, it was
No, it should
fixed.
be
It was,
09.
there was a typo on the original.
Yeah.
I fixed it today.
Oh,
Sorry.
can't own that. You're right, should be
Sorry.
1009.
I
Mark
noticed
Garrett.
that typo
Yeah.
earlier today and I fixed it. So it is wrong on the one that you have, but on the one, I fixed it today.
So why, okay, then why, if it's jumping with the kindergarten class is gonna be so big, why are we only picking up one?
Because again, that's the population of the whole district. The 1,100 is the population for the whole district. So a big class could be moving out, it depends on how many kids are graduating as well.
Oh, so big, similarly big class moving out.
Right.
Would do it. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's, I just find that the birth rate in 2022 to 2023 and 2023 to 24, just absolutely amazing. And what we were talking about earlier in our leadership team meeting is that we'll have too many kindergarten teachers that year, assuming things stay the same, but we will need those kindergarten teachers then, for the next year when we have.
This is why it's helpful to have this.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not just, guessing and that kind of thing. And that big bubble will go through the grades, right? Well, it will affect our class sizes pretty dramatically, especially with the next class following them. It's something we just need to pay attention to.
Does anybody like track families moving into the district?
We don't. Nick, is there a way to, I don't know if there's a way to do
I
that.
mean, we can see transfer in status. In that way, so we can always track how many, now I don't have numbers in front of me, but. We can do it by star status, yeah.
I mean, like, I hate anecdotal evidence, but I know dozens of families who moved into the district with small kids in the last 5 years.
That's what we like to hear.
So I was just wondering how they get that, if it could be incorporated, maybe when they have a longer data set, they could.
Yeah, I
See
think,
it.
yeah, I think that's where they can get better, more accurate trending data. Right now, I think they're guessing a bit because it's only 2 years. And they said that when we joined on with them last year, they were like, the data will get better and better each year.
Is that like just a general model, like using the births 5 year prior for a kindergarten class, like just assuming there's some churn in and out?
I believe so.
So it's
Yeah,
like, that's like sort of their baseline, and then from there.
I believe so.
Oh.
NESDEC is all New England, so a
Okay.
lot of school districts in New England use them.
Alright.
And they do other things too. They can do other things for you. But yeah, they must have some sort of modeling behind it. Okay, you appropriately were fascinated by that. Let's move on. So just a reminder, the school board focus, the academic achievement for all students, safety, inclusion, and belonging for every member of our community, and a commitment to open communication with our community. And the board has seen this multiple times, our theory of growth with our 4 pillars: collective responsibility and collaborative practices, formalized essential learning, timely system to enrich, intervene, and remediate, and high quality instruction for every classroom. It's our theory that should we have these 4 pillars firing on all cylinders, that we'll be building limitless futures for our kids. We started this chart for the board a couple of years ago, where we've linked a lot of where people can find more information on our 4 pillars and some of the work that we've been doing. When it's connected to the budget, you're thinking about what's the professional learning. So we have Dr. Sarah Lupo and Dr. Kateri Thunder on here, along with Kay Pronis. So like you can see where some of the money is being spent. Letters training, of course, was a big expense 2 years ago. And some of it is not, some of it is more staffing and human resources, like our coaching and our interventionists. But these are all places where people can get more information from our website around how these dollars are spent. So our context for the budget, here's our glossary of terms. I'm not going to go into these. We have this on the budget presentation for anybody who just needs to put this in a different tab. So they have this up all the time because we use these words pretty, Mike and I use these words with like rolling off our tongue and recognize that they are not very easily understood. So we try our best, but this is just as a cheat sheet for everybody. And again, another cheat sheet of where the public and the board can find more information about how Vermont currently funds education, as it's very unique to other places. So the purpose of these budget presentations is to provide the board and the community with accurate information.
That child is very excited about budget
Yeah,
presentations.
yeah, they are.
That's what I think.
Provide board information to better understand and discuss our education spending with our community. Provide you all with information regarding what a level programmed budget might look like. And level program would mean little to no increase or decrease to programming for students. And determine the direction for next steps in the budget development process. And that could include potential reduction amount, or I guess it could include potential increase amount as well. But that's the purpose of these budget presentations. This is the first budget presentation, and there still are a lot of unknowns that we'll talk about in a second. Just a reminder of where we are. This is not the end all be all of what you're going to hear. You're going to hear this presentation at least 3 more times. But that's where we are right now. So in between now and our next board meeting, we'll take the board's feedback and questions and we'll make some revisions through it. We continue to talk to community and staff about needs and desires, and we can roll all of that as we make each revision. The administration's recommended priorities, saw this 2 board meetings ago. We want to maintain resources for an effective MTSS model and SEL and academics. We want to allow for professional learning and equitable and inclusive classroom instruction. We want to sustain our safe and beautiful facilities. We want to ensure continuation of co-curricular activities. We also want to develop a budget that's fiscally responsible for our taxpayers and protect the services dedicated to our most vulnerable children and families. Again, you've seen this slide before. Mike and I added 1 column to it today. And I'll let Mike talk about that a little bit. We added the dollar yield column because we often know the dollar yield by this time, or at least we have the predicted dollar yield. We put the dollar yield on town meeting day, recognizing that the dollar yield isn't set in law until May or June. However, when voters vote on the budget, they're voting on something on town meeting day, right? Recognizing that that could be different. So we put the dollars from town meeting day. Mike, you're a go.
The only thing I would add is, you can see in fiscal 24, the dollar yield was up at 15,479. If you may or may not remember, that was kind of the end of the ESSER funding cliff, where the funds were coming in, and after that, I think the decision was made to potentially release some reserves that allowed, to help communities with their challenging and education rising costs and all the things that we face today. So I think that was kind of a break between 24 and 25. And then we wanted the footnote 26 to say that yield rate was adjusted for the statewide average. I think originally came in the 11s, and then we had to adjust it based on like a 72.36 statewide average, the same statewide average adjustment that the CLAs had to go through as well. And so that's just reflective there in 26.
The FY24 is interesting because that dollar yield was so high at 15,419, and our budget increased by 6%, but the tax rate was 1.2, $1.02. So that tax rate was low because the dollar yield was so high. You're up, Mike.
The way Libby finds, I think, birthing dates and enrollment fascinating. I find this slide really fascinating. It's taught me a lot about the communities that I used to serve and the ones that I serve now, which is how does Montpelier-Roxbury Public School fund its education? And you'll see this is broken into 3 groups: the residents, non-residents, and then obviously the general ed fund. What's fascinating here is 26%, about 26% of the residents are contributing towards education. The non-residents are contributing approximately 34%, and the rest is coming from the general ed fund. I just find that fascinating.
Is non-residents essentially commercial?
It is commercial and second business, second homeowners that don't have, right, are not claiming that as their primary residence.
Got it.
And then can you explain to the board and community, I'm guessing if I had the question, then others might as well. What does that mean? Like what the general ed fund paying 40% of our education costs? What is that? How? What does that mean?
My understanding of the general ed fund is, it's a good question, obviously, is that, the goal is that every student, every child receives the same education. Under, was it Act 40, not 46, Act, can't remember the name of.
Long time ago.
A long time ago, it was.
60 and 68.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so they realize not all communities can raise what they need through property taxes to fund that education. So everyone gets a similar chance of a good education. So in this example, through residents and non-residents, Montpelier is unable to collect what it needs to fund its education based on that per cost per child, right? Penalty, not penalty, but the cost that the state is mandating we stay under, right? Before there's a penalty applied. So other communities are able to raise more than they need. They kick those funds up to the general ed fund pool, along with other like the lottery, tobacco, alcohol tax, all that. Sales and use tax is also contributing towards that general ed fund. So there's a lot of sources that feed that general ed fund pool. And all this is just showing is how does that breakdown happen within the 27.5 million that is needed for ed spending needs. And just in ed spending needs is obviously total expenses minus local revenues. So that net number is that number there you see it for this year that we're in.
Scott, yep, thank you. Scott, did you have a question about this?
Yeah, I do have a question. Mike, I really appreciate this. And I'm kind of curious. I suspect that we are a special case because so much of our tax base is not taxable, right? Because we have so much state government property, right, in Montpelier. And so is that why there's such a high percentage of our education spending coming from the general ed fund and not from taxes?
You know, Scott, it's a good question. I don't know if I have all the answers as to the specific reasons of whether I have government buildings or businesses or that's a great question. I'd have to dig further to give you a better answer.
Jake, do you have an idea about that or no? Not to put you on the spot.
That breakdown is pretty typical. If you think of the whole.
For
ed
districts
fund,
across the state,
Yeah,
you mean?
I mean, it varies community to community. But if you think of the whole ed fund, it's made up of 25% homestead taxes, 40% the non-homestead tax, and then all the other sources. So that would be the other 35% are sales tax and the things that Mike mentioned. So that's as close to what our district is experiencing.
He's right. Very few communities can fund 100% of their education
Sure.
through their own property taxes, residents or non-residents. The communities that I served before, I think it was only Peacham was able to do that. The rest of the communities, 8 other towns that I served, look very similar to what Jake just said, to this model right here.
Is this without respect to federal funds?
That
Are
is,
federal funds on top of this, the 27?
that 27 includes, that's local spend. So no, that is net of everything. That's net of grant funds as well.
Okay.
Do you have a question?
I was just thinking that there's a lot more, there's not a lot of industry in Vermont, and if there is, it's in Chittenden County, but if the education fund is mostly funded through property taxes, maybe that doesn't.
But it's not
help me
mostly,
understand this.
but it's not mostly funded through property taxes. Property taxes
Well,
are only about a quarter.
Here, right, but if
Well,
I'm in Burlington, how much money
Is it
is being collected, it's different, no,
Is it different? I don't know.
yeah.
Just to make a clarification, you said only 20, that's 26% of the residents that claim their property to be their main residence. Non-residents, make no mistake about it, that is property. Could be residential property, could be
Gotcha.
commercial property, just to be
Gotcha.
clear.
Apartments.
Yeah.
Rental property, exactly, yep, but it's still property. I look at that as property taxes. And I would say a significant portion of the general ed fund is still property taxes.
Got it.
I don't know the exact percentage, but there are communities that raise a lot more than they need and they kick it up.
Oh, okay. Jim has his hand up. He's not on the screen.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was going to ask, kind of the point I was going to make. I mean, like, the ed fund, obviously, it's not just money that grows on trees or it's not gifted to us. So, what does contribute to the ed fund? My understanding it is, property tax. It's kind of a way to, it's mostly property taxes, but it's kind of a way to redistribute property taxes on top of what towns pay, to make it even. And is there any other source that funds it, or is it just kind of another fund that property taxes go into for the redistribution purpose?
Good question, Jim. This is a slide I can leverage from a previous life over CCSU that actually kind of breaks down the general ed fund and what is it, what contribute towards it. It may not have the exact percentages, but it will at least give us a better picture so we can all understand better, including me.
Well, and Jim, I'm not sure if you heard Jake kind of did the broad statewide breakdown. So sales and use tax goes in there and then a bunch of other like lottery and things like that go in there too.
Tobacco, lottery, all of it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I heard some of it, but not all.
I don't know it all, unfortunately.
Keep going.
Okay. I find this next slide pretty fascinating as well. So within that 26% of the residents how do the tax demographics break down between Montpelier and Roxbury? As you can see here, it's broken into basically 4 income groupings. Homesteads with less than 47,000 pay approximately 2% of their income. So it's not, the home value is irrelevant. Between 47,000 and 90, they're going to pay that income sensitive rate, which is the income yield that comes out divided by the town's CLA. And that's how that,
No CLA for that one. That's on the property.
oh, sorry, income yield divided by the cost per
For people spending.
people spending. Sorry, thank you. Thank you for the correction.
That's why we got him here.
Yes.
That's right,
Thank
it's
you.
big ball behind the table.
So, right. And then the next grouping is that between the 90 and the 115, and that's paying a combination of the income sensitive rate and the homestead tax rate. And there are some home value exclusions or limits, maximum limits, and which we'll get to in the next few slides. But that's just showing what percentage of the people are in that. And then lastly, homestead incomes greater than 115, that should say 0.4. The new deck does say the 0.4 because the limit did change from last year from 115 to the 115,400. And they pay that homestead tax rate that you're all very familiar with. And I wanted to put a footnote at the bottom, thanks to and by the way, first of all, thank you very much, Jake Feldman, for helping me gather this information. And you've been helping me with this for the last 4 years because that's my previous duty over at CCSU. But there's an important footnote I'd like to make. This is looking at the tax year filings of 2024. The budget you're about to be approving for the community to be voted on will be comparing 26 household income, which we applied to the 28 tax bill. So we're all on a lag here, right? And it's just important to understand that. And when we get to the next few slides, the purpose is not to provide exactness, just to be directionally correct to allow community members to personalize, well, what does this budget mean for me? That's all. So we'll get there in a few. Any questions on that slide? Sorry, before we jump.
So once we establish what the FY27 budget is and people are looking at what that's going to mean for their taxes, whoever's making that calculation is using their 2026 household income, not their 2027 household income.
Correct.
To be applied, I guess I don't understand the last part of that sentence.
The credit, the income-based credit that people get.
Yeah.
don't show up in the year when it's generated.
Okay,
So like, so FY27 in Montpelier, Mike has people under 47,000 pay a flat 2% of their income.
yep,
So.
but they're gonna see that on their FY28 tax bill, is that what you're saying?
28 bill is
Yep.
gonna have the
Credit,
credit earned it for FY27.
got it,
And that stinks if you, and like you and your spouse are retiring
right,
for December 31st.
Yep.
And you think, oh, sweet, like our tax bill is about to go way down,
right,
right? But then come August, when you get your bill, it hasn't gone way down because it's based on the prior year
Yep.
income and prior year taxes, but prior year income, when you and your spouse were both working. So there's a lag. So like, people say like, oh, well, some people don't have to worry about their education taxes at all. That's kind of true for a small percentage, except for the lag. They will experience a big increase in the first year that it occurs.
thank
If the
you.
big increase doesn't occur. Thank you, Jane.
All right. So this is my attempt at simplifying residents or homestead values and their income and what it would mean to them based on potential budget we're putting in front of them. So at the very top row, you'll see 2%, 2.54, and then $1.27. So the 2% is obviously very similar to what we talked about in the previous slide, which is the income bracket of less than 47,000. That's why you can see that in the bracket where it's, where income is 35,000 and 47,000, it is a flat amount all the way down to the $400,000 homestead value. Because that's the limit before they would be, that demographic of residents would be impacted beyond the 2%. So as long as the homestead value that they live in is less than 400,000, if they're in that range, they're gonna pay that 700 on 35,000, or they're gonna pay the 940 on the 47. Hopefully that's clear. Very similar to the next bracket, the $60,000. I'm just using, one example, 60,000 and 90,000. Within those two brackets, they're gonna pay that income sensitive rate, which, thanks to Jake correcting me, it is, taking the income yield and dividing it by the per pupil spending. So that's why that's flat all the way to the bottom. But again, there are limits to the homestead value at 400,000. Okay. So that's kind of the dark gray. Then the light gray, two buckets, is when the income is over 90,000, so $90,001 and less than 115. I just chose 110. It's a random income number. So that is taking 110,000 times the income sensitive rate, but it's capped at the 225. So once you get over the 90,000, but under 115, the homestead value cap stays at 225. So you're still paying an income sensitive rate beyond that the 115, that 400. So this slide does have it, which is good. You'll see that the income sensitivity is waived, and you're paying the homestead rate of $1.27 in this particular example. So again, it's just the whole purpose here is not to provide exactness, but if somebody understands about where their homestead income is and the value of their home, they'll be able to personalize the budget that we'll be putting in front of them to vote. That's it. And what this is saying is, 36% of Montpelier residents are paying either the flat 2% or the income sensitive rate of 2.54. And again, I wanted to put a couple of caveats in here just to explain that this is not every example. That again, this is for homestead declaration defines the homestead as your principal dwelling and up to 2 surrounding acres, because beyond that, you don't quite fall into this bucket that I'm trying to graphically show.
Yeah, your homestead is actually, and I feel like a jerk, really, when I talk about these things, because it's just all hopelessly complicated, and it's painful, and it needs to change. But anyway, your homestead is your entire parcel. If you are a homestead, house site is a house that's surrounding 2 acres, and that's the part that gets the sensitivity, the income sensitivity. The tax department doesn't consider the rest of your acreage. That just gets the straight homestead rate. So like in Montpelier, parcels are generally less than 2 acres, but in Roxbury, they're probably bigger ones, so they're more commonly play.
Thank you. I was shooting for directionally correct.
Fantastic.
Thank you. And this is just the Roxbury similar, just trying to help people understand exactly the same thing on the previous slide. Just so you guys are, maybe you already know this, so I apologize if I'm boring you, but the income sensitive rate itself will always be the same for both communities, especially in a fully unified district. All right, it's the homestead tax rate that will differ because of the CLA.
Right.
Each town has its own CLA and have a different value. It would be coincidental if both towns have the same CLA. Okay, that's why I showed I think $1.27 for Montpelier and $1.30 for Roxbury. Again, with the same caveats. That's it.
Hey, there's my kids.
There's Natalie Remick.
They're building sets for Legally Blonde, which is playing next weekend here
a
at the
good
high
plug.
school.
Saturday night, Saturday afternoon, Saturday night.
That's right.
Get your tickets now before it sells out.
So we still have some unknowns with this budget. We had our first run with long-term weighted average daily membership, which is LTW ADM. Mike and Nick are working very hard on that because like other years, the LTW ADM was wrong. the first run, and Mike noticed it right away, and Nick has been on it with our friends in Measure Ed. So having Nick in this position is like
Huge.
is wonderful, because he can really spend some time on it, and he has a really good relationship with Measure Ed, who handles all of our data and handles data across the nation. So we've already picked up 50 weighted students because of the work that's
Whoa.
been being done. The free and reduced were really off. The other place that Nick is looking into is to see if our pre-K students who are considered English language students would get the weight for the English language, which would be huge
Oh.
if they did. So our friend Gemini says there's nothing in statute that would preclude the pre-K kids to not get the 2.49 weight in addition to the pre-K weight. However, that's not our understanding of what the agency has been doing, because pre-K students do not get tested with the WIDA exam, which is the test that we use to determine eligibility. But there's nothing in statute that says EL is determined by the WIDA. So I have an email out to a couple colleagues who have more multilingual learners than we do to see what happens in other districts and if they know anything about it. And Nick is also working with the state on that.
Is when a minute or so ago when you were talking about the weighted students, is the way that free and reduced lunch is calculated now, why you guys have to do that extra legwork? Like, is it hurting us the way that it's calculated?
No, it's actually helping us
Okay.
the way the direct cert. I'm looking at Nick just to make sure I get ahead now.
Okay,
My understanding is that the direct cert helps us because it's not determined on whether
they file the
you
paper.
file your paperwork.
Okay.
It's dependent on other ways to source that data.
Okay.
So for that number, at the end of the day, that's a number that we determine and certify to the state. It's not a number that the state gives to us or
Come on up and talk about, you can stay right where you
Mike,
are.
you
There's
stay.
2 seats for a
I
reason.
give my seat up.
Nick, come on up,
Nah,
because
you
you
don't have
are
to.
more of an expert on this than I am.
And while Nick's getting settled, those are Career Center medical professional students who are gonna be our future nurses and doctors.
Sorry, Tim, can you ask your question again?
I was just trying to understand how that number, the LTW-ADM, is ultimately set. Is it a number that we determine and certify to the state, or is it a number that the state gives
We
to us?
determine the number of students that like our student information system has total enrollment, right? And
Yeah.
then you could speak better to this, but then all of certain student demographics cause certain weights that are written in statute. So
And they're tagged.
yeah, and so young people that are considered like economically disadvantaged, 185% or lower of the poverty rate, those students have a weight of
We've got it. on it.
2 something.
No, not that high, but I can't remember the exact.
Yeah, it's a higher weight. And then young people that are English language learners,
That's the.
they have a rate of like a 2.5, but if you're not an English language learner, depending on what grade you're in, you may have a weight of just 1, for example. And then pre-K is 0.54. So we have all that in our student information system. We just have to make sure that what AOE is getting out of our system is accurate, and that's what we're certifying. And then Mike does his magic with the ADM.
There's no magic. So 2-year average enrollment, ADM. That's the basis of every and all long-term weighted average ADM. 2 years. So the year we're in, and October 1st, I think, is a key date.
Yep.
Of the kids in the seats. We understand it's very, variable and it changes. It's fluid. But so that 2-year average is the year we're in the prior year. Then after that, based on the different demographics of the child and the students, that's when the weightings kick in. Like the communities I came from, some of them had rurality, some of them had small school, and those gave extra weights under Act 73. I believe that was the change in some of the
127.
weighting formula. Some of them.
127.
127, sorry. Yeah, so we don't have rurality and we don't have small schools, so we don't get those weightings, but we get the other weightings that Nick just referenced.
And so we have our information about the kid and then all the other factors that would go to the weighting, and that's what's in our system. And then we submit that to AOE, and somewhere in between there, we or they decide what our number is.
We're constantly checking the data. And if something looks off, we're working with them to.
Yeah, and they will send us back, here's your data, like here's your number. And then
Okay.
we'll vet that number and say something's off because what we have
I
is
see.
lining up. And then you just keep going back and forth. It's really fun.
And that's exactly what happened. I almost like had a heart attack when the latest round was sent out. I think it was on November 21st. And all of a sudden, the weighting dropped by like 70 kids. And of the 70, 50 had to do with the economically disadvantaged. And that was a 7-cent impact on our tax rate. And I was like, I'm gonna have to look for a new job if this happens, right? I got nervous. So I said, Nick, please help. And he jumped right on it. And he's been working with it ever since.
And so this process carries on. It's measured like as of October 1, but this is going to carry on throughout the budget season and past, or
I would expect that we'll have a solid number at some point. We're getting closer and closer every day, but the other thing about Vermont is different districts will have different student information systems.
right.
And so if you're using Infinite Campus or Alma or Power School like we have, the way that the systems are set up and the way that AOE collects the information, it's a new system and they're constantly trying to figure out all the bugs. Like right now, pre-K multilingual learners, for example, are not being pulled in the way that they should be. Because they were using something else to vet how that would be weighted. So it's just a constant back and forth
Okay.
with them on that.
When do you think that's like pretty firm?
It's taken
Hopefully
5
through.
rounds in the past. It's taken 5 rounds in the past, but the difference being is in the past, when we didn't have somebody like Nick in the position to pay this much attention to it, it was our business manager who was like, that doesn't look right. Right? It was literally like a hunch. That doesn't look right. And Mike Barry, who was trying to do all the work with the curriculum and technology and the data, would try to go in and do something, yeah, I agree, it doesn't look right, right? So it would go back and forth for about 5 different times, and it's all dependent about other school districts too, like other school districts will be working this way as well. This time, like Nick's got his eyes on the data so closely that he's like, yeah, I think we got like 12 kids left that we gotta really figure out, like he's that specific.
Got it.
So it might not be 12, maybe putting words in your mouth, but you
Depends
know.
on what AOE sends next.
So we
direction?
know the data, we know our side of the data so well now
Right.
that I think we'll get there sooner than we have in the past.
Got it.
Where we would put we're not even showing you the number right now because we don't know, we're still off.
Okay. All right. Thanks. That's helpful.
I personally feel blessed to have Nick on the same team because I had to figure it out on my own in previous jobs. And this is outstanding.
Measure Ed is great.
You're great.
Scott, what's your question?
While we're on the budget unknowns and the tax factors, I'm curious if what's called the December 1st letter that came out, does that change any of the knowns versus unknowns, or is everything that was in that sort of anticipated?
So Scott, when Anna sent out the board packet, the dollar yield was one of the unknowns on your list, should probably be on your thing, but I took that off because we now know what the predicted dollar yield will be.
I mean, it could change.
That's the only thing that's changed from what you're looking at on your screen and what I'm showing the community. So other things we're not sure of yet, the cent discount, Jake assures us we're gonna get something like that again this year from 2127. We're just not sure how that's calculated just yet.
Yeah, it's not hard. There's a footnote in the letter that explains how to do it.
Oh, good. We missed it. That's all right. We'll look at it.
What does it mean?
It's from 127 if you remember, we were one of the districts that the new weights hit hard.
Oh,
Remember that?
yeah,
And we
yeah,
got
that I
a cent
remember.
discount. Yeah, we got a cent discount, and it was 11 cents and then 10 cents, and so.
Okay,
We'll-
so it's
we'll figure
it's
it
like a leveling or gradual
Yeah.
Yes.
drop because we got hit, so.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Common level appraisal, my friend Jill says we'll have that by January 1st. And then we're not sure about the EEE grant yet or transportation aid. And our expenses that we are still unknowns we're in negotiations with the MREA, which is our teaching staff, and the MRESSA, which are instructional assistants, so we're not sure what that contract negotiation will do. And the Career Center 6 semester average, we'll get in a couple weeks.
You know, although we don't have an exact number on transportation aid, I mean, I know, I understand how it's calculated. It's usually 46 cents of the prior year's transportation allowance costs. So that's how I modeled it for our revenue projections. Could be off a couple thousand, but it's more than directionally correct for our purpose.
And are the federal grants that were in jeopardy? Do you have any more clarity on those?
No, but we never have clarity on those at this point in time, like, we don't get those numbers until June, May or June-ish.
Okay.
But from an inclusion standpoint, what we did not include, we did not assume any Title II or Title IV funding, only Title I.
And Medicaid
And
and the IDEA.
we did assume IDEA and we did assume, you know, limited Medicaid funds, yeah. Yep,
Go for it, Mike.
okay. So what we're putting in front of you here is the expenditures needed for fiscal 27. It's up 2.136 million from the prior year, or 6.6%. We did not include the capital plan. We wanted the board to make that decision. So we're leaving that at 0. So the net, the non-tax revenue totals are 5.9, up almost $1 million. I think is what Libby had alluded to earlier, that we're getting more exact in how revenues come in. Like the transportation aid is up significantly. Extraordinary income for special education is up significantly, and that's where we're finding it. So the net impact of ed spending needs as of right now is 870. If we were to add the 270 in that capital plan back, obviously that number would go up to slightly over 1.1 million. We don't know the exact number of LTW ADM. We believe it's going to be in the mid 1800, so 1850-ish, maybe even better. Nick can work his magic. And so that's why we can't give you an ed spending per LTW ADM as at this moment. But we do know the property early indication, the property yield rate will be 88.49, which really is wonderful. And so once we have what we are missing, we'll be able to provide you a pre-CLA tax rate.
You know what's not on this chart that I just realized is that cent discount too.
Right.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we'll just make sure that we do that.
The number I'm using is probably wrong, so I'm glad it's not actually.
So what do we care about more? The total budget number or the education spending, just from a, like, can someone explain those, like how I should think about those two?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd say what matters for the voters really is more on the ed spending, because that's what's affecting the tax rate. That's not to say that, you know, we can be irresponsible on what we're spending.
Right.
It's just that is what's actually impacting all of us.
Is that the number that's on the warning, though?
No, that's
The general
Nina, that's a great point. So the way the warning has changed to now say what the total expenditures are.
Right, and then it would be the 6.6, an
Correct.
increase of 6.6 over the previous year. That's how the warning is worded.
Correct. They won't.
It's not as nice as seeing a 3.14 increase over the
Well,
last.
to your point, we're not able to get credit for the fact that we found an extra million, not an extra, but by refining both the expenditure side and the revenue side.
Right.
We're getting to a better result.
Right.
Which is a more accurate indication to your community. But you're right, it will look like that stinks.
On the warning on the budget line, I don't think it says this is an increase of 6.6% over the prior year.
Oh, it's the per.
It's a
the
dollar
per-
amount.
It's the
Oh.
per pupil's
Total
total
spend, the per LTW ADM percentage, but the total spend number does need to be listed. She is right there. I think the percentage.
Oh,
But it might be on the student, per student.
so we don't know that yet, but that is good news, because that is
You could be right.
based on education spending, so that
Yes.
number, but it's also based on enrollment, which it sounds like. Even after the refining that Nick and you and the AOE are doing is going to be lower than what it was from last year. Okay,
So, but
I'm following you.
but leaving the sort of political side, you know, of like what's on the warning, putting that to the side, in terms of how we're trying to be responsible stewards of, you know, of funds and whatnot. Like, is the education spending would seem to be the number that we should really focus on. Is that correct? Like, this is a question I'm kind of struggling with.
From a communication standpoint to your constituents that you're representing in the communities and people, yes, I would say absolutely yes. But what's gotta be on the warning,
Yeah.
we have to by statute put the total
General
spend on.
budget.
Jill's looking it up right now.
I realize Scott has his hand up, but I hear what you're saying, Tim, about the, you know, what's on the warning, politics aside, but I wouldn't want to go to our community and say, please approve a $28.6 million budget, when in fact, what they're gonna see on the warning is
Oh.
34.5.
Yeah, no, I get all that. I'm just trying to think for myself on how, like, on trying to get to what's important.
Right.
In managing costs and providing,
Sure.
you know, top level education, like where should we be focusing? And then we can, from like that substantive base, work on how we communicate out,
Mhm.
you know?
Okay, all right,
But fair point all around.
we've got Scott with his hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question and then a comment to add to the conversation about the budget versus ed spending, right? So really quickly, like if we are like amazing and start recruiting students from all over the country to come, our general budget's going to go up, but so is our revenue, right? And so ultimately there may be no impact to the taxpayers, but if we add 100 students from around the world, right? But our general budget's going to go up, right? So what I think Tim is saying, and I agree with, is ultimately, what's the number that is impacting tax rates? And if I understand Mike correctly, it's the 3.14% increase in ed spending. Is that correct?
It is, and so maybe the full story of how to present this to the community is you're transparent about it all. Yes, we're up 6.6% or 2.1 million. However, our revenues are up about $1 million. And so when you net the two, the need tax purposes is the 28.6. So therefore, we're only up 3.14%. I mean, just be transparent,
Yeah.
right? But
Well, that's why all of this is on the slide,
That's
which I
right.
appreciate.
right.
So then that really quickly brings up my other question. My child had a very, very important question for me that could not wait, and I think I missed this, but why did the non-tax revenues go up by 20%? Because that seems significant.
Yeah,
And yet I missed it.
sure. There's the three major drivers. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. I'm sorry. I could pull it up later, maybe at the next presentation. But the lion's share of that $1 million is extraordinary income, because I'm using a real calculator for the students that have high needs. And so that is helping. In the past, I think it was more of a level loaded revenue number. And so I'm using a calculator the AOE provides, and that's getting to a more exact number. So that's up significantly. Transportation aid, no different. That was kind of just level loaded every year. And I understand the way the reimbursement model works, and I'm just using a more accurate number. And the last piece is more interest income. So when we work with Community National Bank for that TAN that you all approved to provide working capital to us before the tax money comes in, being smart about when money comes in, not putting it into a next to nothing interest rate checking account or main operating account. We're putting the money in a TAN, which is yielding approximately 4%. So that's helping, and we're going to earn 2 to 3 times as much as that TAN will cost us in interest expense. We're going to generate on the income side. So just good money management. So those are the three big drivers of the revenue number being up. Scott, I hope that's helpful.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mike.
The thing to be aware of that we've been talking as a leadership team is Mike is using more exact numbers to get bigger revenues this year. And it's a one-time thing, right?
Yep.
He's not gonna find that same revenue amount next year.
No.
Find isn't the right word. He's not gonna he can't be more exact next year.
No.
So it will be.
No, but again, it's some of that's also on the expense side too, right? Like trying to get more accurate, so I can look all of you in the eyes and tell you, this is what it really does cost. And this is what the revenue offsets are gonna be, so we know what the ed spending net amount is. So this one time, that's true, but I think this is kind of a one time for, on both sides of the equation to get more accurate. So when we go forward, we'll know what real increases will be.
So if I hear you correctly, the increase is one time, right? But then it will be, it's not like we're gonna see a big decrease in future years. It's just gonna maintain. We're not gonna see it the same level increase
Correct.
over year over year.
I think
Okay.
Libby just referenced, we're not gonna see another $1 million increase in the next year. It will be more level loaded, right? Correctly level loaded. Assuming the variables that drive them don't change. I'll have to caveat that. If all of a sudden things were to change on, in the special education world, or if we stopped or changed the way we provide transportation costs, that will obviously drive the revenue.
All right, are we still fascinated? Great, let's keep
I think
going.
this is fascinating stuff. I think this is really helpful. I appreciate the level of detail.
You're still on, sir.
This next slide.
There are a lot of slides I have to talk through, Libby. It's true.
All right, so this slide is just trying to obviously break out in a pie graph, what are the expenditures by the major programs? General education versus special education versus co-curricular, all the way across. You can see that, huge chunk of it is general ed and special ed, and the rest break up into those different categories. But it's just a way to look at total spend and what areas we're spending them in. Again, this is by program, which I believe is the non-pie graph example. Is looking at it just in total year over year, and also comparing it to 25 actuals by program.
Wait, I have a question on this one.
Yep.
When I was looking at the numbers, just lost the principals line has a almost 12% increase over last year. And some of the comments or the reasoning for it, you have the 7% increase in health insurance premiums, but how does that 7% go to 12%?
That's not enough comments, so I need to
Okay.
finish that out. That's not all healthcare premium, I can tell you
Okay.
for sure. So I'll take that as a takeaway.
As Mike's writing that note to himself, here the expenditures by category is just a little broader than before. We just had to show the board in a few different ways how our expenditures are broken up.
The category is also known as like an object code. So salaries, benefits, purchase services, dues and fees.
This is where you can truly see that salaries and benefits make 75% of our budget.
That's right. On the people business.
Yeah.
Similar, just non-pie graph, just showing it by bucket over the actuals of 25, 26 budget and 27 proposal.
I'm glad that these made it in because I'm sort of on this dog with a bone lately about the cost of health insurance and the impact that has, right? We we hear about like school spending, and it makes it sound as though it's that school districts are spending more money. But in fact, health insurance alone is like is 23% of our budget, if I read that correctly, and is going up every year.
We'll look at the FY25 actuals to the FY27 proposed on that category side. It's $1 million more in a 2-year period of time.
Right.
And it's more than just health insurance, but it is health insurance obviously is a significant portion of that 23%.
That's true. There's other benefits in there.
When I first got into education finance in 2019, family plan was under 20,000. It's like 19 and change. Now the family plan alone is over 40,000. So in 6 years, it's
people
doubled.
have a dog with a
So to
bone
your
about
point,
it.
Jill.
Which wasn't mentioned in the dollar yield letter.
You think
Is that a regional thing or a nationwide thing?
That's a great question. I don't know.
I think it's nationwide. We experience it in the work I do with the state pension systems. We have actuaries that consult for systems across the country, and they're telling us that like the national trend that they're using to project future increases is just used to be something they change every couple of years. Now they're revisiting it multiple times in a year because it's going up so quickly. So while we have, it's certainly hitting in this state very hard, what they're telling us is that it's a very national offense.
Doesn't Vermont have highest premium in the country?
I think so.
It may, but the percent of increases, I think, is being like directionally, it may not start from the same baseline, but it's moving in the same direction, I think, all across the country.
I think I heard that on BPR too.
Yeah, we have Pure, my wife does healthcare policy, so I know
You have a fun household there, Jay. Marty.
very, but we have Vermont has, according, she told me, pure community rating, is that right, Tim? Which is
I don't know that.
when you get a premium, they don't charge you extra if you're old or if you smoke or anything like that. It's the same for everybody. It's kind of socialized, but if you
Oh,
have
I
a
see.
population that is rapidly aging, then that can bite you.
This next slide is it's not all expenditures, it's just the salary portion of that pie graph made into a different pie graph, so you can see how that salary is broken down. So 75% of our salary is broken into student-facing positions and instructional assistants, or people who are on the teacher's contract. And I say it just that way because people who are on this teacher's contract are not just classroom teachers, but also our social workers and our nurses. And so I just want to make sure that we're not just imagining a person in front of a class of two kids.
So this next slide is obviously the revenue that we're projecting in 27. With the bulk of it obviously coming from ed spending, 13% from state grants. Federal grants only makes up 3%, and 1% is local other. Anything that didn't fall in the other three fell in the other. So it's 1% small potatoes. This capital plan, after working with obviously Tom Allen and Libby, I'm just trying to show obviously some of the decisions that were made at the end of the fiscal 25 year, which was that the allocation from unrestricted to the capital plan. And, this whole projection is under the premise, obviously, that we're moving forward with, some portion of the UES windows, and Main Street Middle School bottom floor egress windows, and the Main Street Middle School playground. So that's what that green column is representing. And then obviously 27 and 28 just continues to assume we're going to continue to put the annual capital fund request of 270 in, which obviously is at your discretion.
Well, you do have it in here on this slide, but you
do.
don't have it in.
Correct.
Okay.
So this is kind of like wishful thinking, and I'm
Uh-huh.
hoping that triggers the decision to make.
You're no pressure, it's just.
No pressure.
Tell people how to vote, you just tell them to vote.
That's right.
I'm not the board.
This is what it would look like.
Around that 270,000 that has been traditionally put in. From a budget
Right.
perspective.
And then it says at the bottom here, MSMS playground under FY 26, but you don't have it under FY 26.
Correct. Actually at 27, so that's a mistake. I had to move it once I realized we didn't have enough. I think it needs to go over to the following year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Really quickly,
Well, obviously
Lib-
change. Go ahead, Scott, sorry.
yeah, I had the same question that Mia I had the same observation that Mia just pointed out, right? That the 270 is here, but it wasn't in that previous slide. And I'm curious, I would imagine it's a minor difference if you put that 270 in that table.
Budget.
Well,
I
think it comes down to timing too. When I talked to Tom, he made it sound like we would not be able to get it done during the school year that we
You're
want.
talking about Main Street Middle School playground.
Yes.
Yeah, he's talking about the 270.
Oh, the 270
The
for the
budget.
budget. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry, Scott. Did I answer the question? It's something I need to answer it.
Yeah,
Either
we
you
just-
answered it or I was confused or both. But I so yeah, in that the table in which it didn't appear, I just wonder in the overall total budget, it has very little impact on the ed spending in the end.
what is it, about a cent on
It's
the
about a
tax
penny, it
rate?
would be about a penny, little over a penny. 1.1,
Yeah.
1.2. Because for every 230-ish thousand that we spend, it moves your tax rate about a cent.
Okay. And then finally, the fund balance. This is where we're at for the fund balance.
Correct. And then at the bottom, you'll see, obviously some variations of whether the board wants to have either that 2% or that 4% cushion, if you will, a reserve set aside. And then I'm just trying to depict what would the value be above that for future allocation purposes. Whether it's the capital fund, whether it's to buy down the tax rate or whatever you guys were thinking.
So the board can make, you don't have to make these decisions in budget time, you can, right, it's just for information.
I have a question. You're suggesting that there are financial mechanisms, tools, products that give us a return, right? When you're talking about this TAN thing that you were saying, if we have a set aside, like say for the net zero study, is that going into an account that's not earning whatever your financial product is capable of giving us back?
No, the general funds as a whole are done that way. So when we have the ability to move funds, this isn't hard money. This is not like a
It's
savings.
how you're labeling it.
It's
Just how you're labeling
Correct.
it. It's not in it. It's
right.
okay.
It's a pool of
Making
funds
sure.
that ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
And so I'm just trying to leverage when big pockets of cash come in, timing of cash versus the timing of the spend. I'm just trying to be wise with that working capital.
So what we name it here is not affecting your ability to do the magical things that it might be able to.
Genuine interest.
Yeah.
I'm trying to earn as much of
That's
just.
a good question, Rhett. Okay, so. Questions for the board's discussion. What are the board's goals regarding the tax implications of our budget, and what information do we need to provide for you in the next budget round? Discuss. And essentially, what can we do to help you make decisions?
Just, we've just been talking about the capital plan. I would love to see our planned contributions going in as we've kind of had the policy in existence, and like the next iteration, I'd like to see it with, if others are amenable with it in, so that we can kind of see I think that will give us a whole picture. And I think it's always really important to maintain that funding discipline. Because once it goes, it's hard to get back to, that next year when we're supposed to contribute 300,000 according to the schedule. It's kind of hard to get back to that place. So from my end, something I'd like to see. That's if folks would agree with that.
I think it would be helpful to see it at least. Yeah. Any other requests?
I think we can flesh out more of that table, the
Slide 25, budget at a glance.
one that goes up down to equalized tax rates with the budget, total budget on top. Yeah, that one.
That one?
Yeah.
The petty is, you can calculate the penny incentive and the CLAs. We did like some preliminary CLAs
Sure.
that you can plug in. They're not final.
Yep.
They won't be final until the end of the year, but it's available. And they're usually pretty close. So we could use all that and basically just down to actual tax rates.
You're spot on, Jake. In fact, Libby and I had the liberty of actually, what would happen if we got a certain CLA? So I can tell you right now that with the budget that we have, we're looking a range based on how the final LTW ADM comes in, what the preliminary CLA could look like. Anywhere from a penny increase to maybe as high as 6 cent increase. Right now, from last year. And we can definitely show that at the next presentation, if the information is not available for us. We can start to make some preliminary views of what we're looking at.
I just wanted to clarify, when you say level programming, this number here, $34,501, $34,501,203 doesn't include any increases or decreases in anything?
Right.
It,
Well, it's
it increases in salary.
Human resources.
Assumed
Right.
increases in salary and assumed and known increase in health insurance costs,
Mhm.
but nothing in like, that would be student facing or programming. Okay. So I would be interested to see then, as Jake was saying, at the next presentation, how that all translates to the actual tax rate with those new
Yep.
things plugged in.
Yep.
And even if it's not our final LTWADM, just what 2 weeks from now.
Sure.
So that we have closer to real numbers. And then that will help us know whatever the tax increase is. I think then myself as a board member would be able to say, does that feel like it's on target? Or do we now need to give you direction to, Libby, you gotta find some more money?
Mhm.
Right now, we can't tell you that because
No.
we don't have an impact, but I would like to be able to, in 2 weeks, for the board to give you direction. Either, this looks great, or we'll need you to find some savings.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I ask a question, like, so if someone comes to me after this board meeting and says, Tim, education spending is up 3%, but we just saw in the news, the tax rates are going up 12%. How do I answer that? Like,
How does he answer it, Jake?
what do I say is going on here?
Your question is, if our district's education spending is going up 3%.
Yeah, are we, like, is the idea that we're just lower than the statewide average, that we're on the lower end of things? Or
3% would be low. For the letter that generated that 12%, we had like closer to like high fives. So that would be like half as much. So yeah, I mean, so you if somebody said that to you, you could say, well, that statewide average may be higher, but our education spending is not going up as much as other districts. So we're thinking our tax rate is not gonna go up as much.
okay, and then the other half of that, like you said, it was about fives for the average, and the other half of that was just the buy down, right? That would
buy-down?
be assumed to not be in place.
Yeah,
this year.
yeah. The buy down has a big effect. Is $118 million.
Yeah.
So it's like 5% worth of effect ish, or maybe high fours. Yeah, the thing about the buy down is that people don't really realize that like 41 million of it was coming from the ed fund anyway. So it's a sort of unusually high bottom line that was available in the ed fund. But that every year they always plow it back in the tax rate.
Yeah.
So it's like not like a big story, the big story is maybe the general fund transfer of 77, which is a little unusual. But yeah, it is a big effect to pump in that much one-time money.
But okay, but directionally, it's fair to say that from what we're seeing as of today, our spending is looking like it's coming in lower than the statewide average that's driving, that letter to a large degree.
I think that's one of the trickiest challenges that we have as superintendents, business managers, and board members is that there's now a media story, right?
Yeah.
It's all over my Facebook feed as a personal citizen
Right.
around, taxes are increasing by 40% across 3, all the numbers that were in that letter.
Right.
And you're right, we need to have our elevator pitch down to say, yeah, that might be what was in the average predicted statewide spending. And Montpelier-Roxbury is not the average.
Right, because this is an inflation budget, as I'm seeing it at this point.
Basically.
We're going up with inflation.
And like a couple weeks ago, Libby, it seemed like things were looking much rougher.
It's because of the revenue that he found, or the more exact revenue numbers are the reasons why it's not as terrible as what we thought was gonna happen. Cause
Okay.
Mike hadn't done that math yet. And what I've learned from Mike is that, in previous years, we just rolled over the same number each year. And that could be why our fund balance grew considerably,
Huh.
quite honestly, because we weren't
We're projecting
doing,
less,
exactly,
less revenue.
right.
than
We
were
weren't
actually
doing the work in like extraordinary costs for special education. Like that was way off on what our previous budget presentations were, which I didn't realize. So, but when Mike did the actual calculation of what we were actually getting and put that in, that's what combat, like that $1 million in revenue that wasn't in previous budgets or what are combating the low dollar yield for us right now.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
yeah.
Like when he told me that, I like jumped for joy. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. This is great. But we didn't know that. We didn't know that 2 board meetings ago.
And could I test like a fringe theory with you?
Oh, now it's fascinating.
Should I get my laptop open?
No, but you might not be able to answer it right now, but like. My question is, could we wait until after the yield bill is passed to set our education spending? Like say, like suppose we have some fund balance available. Could it be a flexible lever? Suppose we had announced to the community that we're gonna get your tax rates increase to be exactly 4%. Could we wait till the yield bill's passed and then set our education spending intentionally to do that?
I think whatever we put in front of the voters, obviously, is something we're gonna target. But once the yield rate does get finalized, to your point, that provides flexibility if we have a fund balance. So we could potentially, if the board could vote, especially as revenues are coming in as well, assuming maybe there's more revenue that I hadn't been able to find that were to come in to offset the spend. I think that's the whole purpose of a fund balance is to have flexibility as long as it's been approved, right, by the board, directionally speaking. So if there's a mission you all have, or a project, or a special circumstance. I came from districts who didn't have a fund balance, so this is really good news. You have one and can use it for purposes of need. So I think, to answer your question, I think you probably could, as long as you voted on it, especially if it wasn't part of the original budget. In more of like a reserved, restricted fund purpose, maybe not unrestricted purpose. So taking unrestricted surplus, which you currently have, and moving it to a specific purpose. And that's where I think you have that flexibility, I think.
The reason I'm fascinated by that is because like last year, we did all this stuff and we told the community, like we thought tax bills were gonna go up 5 point whatever percent. I have no idea what it was. And then the legislature swooped in and pumped all this money in and the community approved the budget based on 5 point whatever,
Yeah,
right? And then the legislature swooped in and said, hey, don't worry about it. And they made it 1% or whatever it was. So like in that case, like, so if they're gonna do that, like, well, why can't we wait till they do their business and then get our taxes to be what we have indicated they would be?
I'd be hesitant to make any modifications to a budget that's been voted on. That's
You vote on the budget,
right.
and then all the internal mechanisms is like, I'm just wondering how far along can we manipulate things? Like, is there a
Well-
point where the law says you need to lock in everything you've said about whatever?
Oh, there is a statute that talks about this where it's the opposite though. It's in a negative environment where the community were to vote it down. You get 90% of the previous year's budget to work with.
Automatically, right, until you can pass a budget.
So I guess if you wanted to sabotage potentially the
Oh,
vote
good lord.
and extend.
I think just a little bit.
The-
Sabotage might not be the right word. We
You
want
know what I'm
to
saying, is that it delay the vote out further, make I came from a community, Calcoa, who didn't have their vote until May. If you wanted to push out the.
I don't think
I'm not
that's-
suggesting
that's
this,
not what
I'm just trying to get creative, that's all.
That's not what Jake's
I
saying.
Jake, I think you're talking about the difference between voting on a tax rate versus a budget. I think we vote on a budget. And you're talking about like kind of reacting to another decision to affect the tax rate, but
Yeah.
I think we would have to change our budget.
No, because the total budget number would be the same, but we would pump in offsetting revenue or pull it out to toggle education spending to get per pupil spending to be exactly what we want it to be.
I understand what you're saying. I don't see why we couldn't, why the board, not we, the board couldn't do that with a vote. The only thing I would say is that you're doing that pretty late in the game in the fiscal year. Because of when they vote the dollar yield. This would, if I'm understanding you correctly, when they vote,
Yeah, it
like
would
they
be
could,
like-
they may not vote, especially, can you imagine this legislative session? They may not be voting that dollar yield bill until the end, very end of June. So the board would need to reconvene to approve the amount either taken out or put in. Right at the end of the fiscal year, which might put this man in his office over a cliff, because that's a very busy time for the closeout of a year, right? It would be adding a new piece, and I'd say it's possible, and you're pushing up against time because you're relying on the legislature making a decision in May-ish, which we know, like last year didn't happen.
Hold on, Scott has his hand up, which I think means he wants to get in on this.
So I'm not ready to go as fringe as Jake. But I do think I think I see some value in the concept that you're bringing up, Jake, because we do have a decision, right, to make about the unanticipated reserve in our the reserves in our fund balance, right? Like I'm flipping back and forth because I just want to make sure I have the numbers, right? So Mike has laid out like if we have 2% or 4%, right? And so that decision, right, it seems to me it makes sense to have that conversation at the like when what Jake was saying, not the overall budget, but merely that conversation about the
Oh, you just muted yourself.
yeah,
Or
I
someone
realized that.
you, I don't know.
It was me. I'm telling myself I'm rambling, so I'm gonna just mute myself. But does that make any sense? Like the logic that Jake was using helps me understand when the timing for our decisions around what to do with the rest of the money in that fund balance.
We may need to continue those discussions, we'll get creative. See what we can do.
Yeah.
One thing I could offer is sorry, I forgot to schedule a finance committee meeting this Friday, but we could take this up in that committee
Oh,
meeting
yeah.
if you want an operations committee meeting, if you guys, Scott and Jake both being in it, if we want to take that issue further and chew on it for a while.
I think it would be smart to have an operations committee before the next budget meeting, because we can talk about that 270, we can talk about the reserve fund, we can talk about lots of different things.
Yeah, I'll reach out with scheduling.
Okay, let's get back to the questions that Libby posed at the end of the slideshow. What is the board's goal regarding the tax implications of our budget? And I think that's okay if we don't actually have an answer for that right now, but it's a good thought-provoking question. And this other one, though, I would like to hear from board members if they have requests for information that they would like to see next time around to help us make decisions, because we don't have to decide, as you know, at the next meeting, but we will be getting closer to needing to make a decision.
I'm thinking about the prospect of spending some of our capital fund. And I know that that's somewhat separate from the budget process, but when we talk about spending money, people get anxious. when we talk about spending, even when we're doing something as productive and wholesome and necessary as fixing windows, spending large amounts of money makes people anxious. And so I don't know if this is something that needs to go in here, or if there's a way to say, this is how we got to where we are with our capital fund. These are the things that we almost did and didn't do, or whatever, and this is how long we've been deliberating on making decisions about spending some of this money, which is specifically for this purpose. Just because,
Investing in our infrastructure.
yes, just because people get anxious when there's large amounts of money being spent and they get confused, and I just want it to be really clear where it's coming from, how we've been adding to that sum over the years, and sort of being very deliberate about how we use that money. And I know it's somewhat separate from this, but it's part of the budget. It's part of people's understanding of taxes is school spending, and that includes infrastructure, because it's not all as clearly separate, I think, in the public eye as it is for us that have been looking at it more closely.
So is there something in particular you'd like to see in the next budget presentation?
Maybe just a breakout of, just a little bit more on that 32 capital plan.
Slide.
And the decision that we made to slide money from the general fund. And sort of like that timeline and kind of how we came to that choice. And I'm not sure if I'm making any sense also.
The sliding the 1.5 million, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
sort of making a decision to spend money on windows and the playground and.
Yeah.
Even a reference to the middle schoolers' presentations, which have been so wonderful, I don't.
Right, and
Or a link.
could link to our facilities report. And could link to, it was, I think, in June that the operations, at the time, finance or operations committee proposed that 1.5, anyway, just could reference whenever that
Yeah,
We can certainly do that.
that
Yep.
presentation. Yeah, I think that's helpful. I appreciate you raising it, because I think the more that we can do to connect dots for people, the better for us. And that is also something I'm hoping that board members will do when we're out in the community over these next 2 weeks, is say, when you say, what questions do you have for us? And somebody might have questions about why would you spend money on windows or a playground
and
or
the more I
whatever.
look at it, the easier it comes out of my mouth.
Yeah. So. Yeah, great.
I'd be curious about, we're starting from the proposition of like a level services budget, but I think some discussion about, how we've looked for efficiencies and whether there's anything that we can find without causing undue anxiety or impacting student outcome. Yeah, exactly. Like, are there any, things like what Mike's doing with managing cash, right? That we're doing something more efficiently to generate revenue there. Is there anything that you guys can see that we're doing so that when we're talking to the community, we can say, we're not just saying level services, but we're challenge the administration to see where there are efficiencies, and that's what they came back with.
Casey, Sam, any requests for information?
I was
Clarification?
just gonna put you two on the spot too, because Casey, this isn't your first go around budget, but I think your second, right?
This is my first budget conversation.
Okay.
In with the end last year.
Okay.
That's right, that's
So it
right.
doesn't hurt, so I'm always like, what can we do better to explain this very complicated process to people who are just looking at it?
The only thing I find kind of confusing
Only
is
one thing?
We think
This is a broad high school student.
from the slideshow is the budget at a glance,
Uh-huh.
which is slide 25, I think. And it's just the headings. Cause it says FY 26 and then proposed FY 27, and it just does dollar sign, then percent makes sense.
Oh,
But I think it's kind of confusing just to have the dollar sign there and be like, here's
Delta.
money.
Delta.
yeah.
What is this the increase? What does that mean in comparison to the proposed budget? It's just kind of confusing.
And that will be even more important to have clarity on when we have the more fleshed out
Would,
one of these charts, so
would like
that's
a,
helpful, thank
would
you.
like a V with a dollar, which kind of relates to like a variance to the prior year, would that be more helpful? Because
Maybe,
the
or-
purpose is trying to show the 27 proposed budget you're looking at and comparing it to the prior year budget of 26, so maybe a V dollar and a V percentage.
Or difference, I
Like
mean,
in-
just
yeah,
using the
for
word
difference.
difference.
Oh,
Difference.
Yeah,
Difference.
Change.
Is it clear, Sam, that FY 26 is the year we're in right now?
Yeah.
Okay, good, and then we're good there, and we're good there.
Thanks, Sam, that's helpful.
I was just gonna ask for sort of, and I think you've pretty much done this, but like the elevator speech version of this, right? Cause I don't think a lot of people are gonna read through these, but there's definitely some like pieces you can pick that I think are. If I've got 30 seconds to think about whether I'm gonna vote yes on this budget or not, it's like,
Yeah.
okay, there was no new, you know, it's basically level funded and going up. Simply based on existing expenses, there was no like
Right.
additional, I don't know, I'm not making sense because it's after 8, but. And I haven't even, but, right, like just sort of like a. Especially in the context, I think that was a really good question about the property tax letter, right? It's like the spending that the district is like choosing to spend is
Yeah.
going up by about 3% based on just existing factors. We're not adding positions or buildings or any, like. I just think it's just helpful.
We will write an elevator.
Like a
pitch.
Yeah.
very like. Bulleted slide of like the highlights of, what's changed. Cause I don't think 90% of folks, maybe more, would know what the yield is or what.
Oh, certainly.
Right, like those kind of things are just kind of lost, but just to sort of say in general, you know. This budget reflects, like the board and the administration have, worked hard to ensure that the budget went up by, a minimal amount based on existing, I don't know, existing
it.
expenses.
I
Yeah,
got
okay,
it.
good,
Yep,
okay.
I got it.
Level programming, no FTE increase, like just.
Cause I think that's just helpful, because again, when you hear the headlines about school spending going up,
Yeah.
blah, 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 it implies that there are decisions being made to add expenses, and that's not.
It's not what's happening.
Right,
Absolutely.
not here. Well, board members, oh yeah, great.
I think the two things that I came away wanting some more information on, it doesn't necessarily impact the budget projections, but I know you did some great calculations to get us some better numbers on revenues, but I'm curious if we saw that between actuals and like early budget predictions in past years. So like I fully believe that they are actual increases that we're gonna see in the revenues, but like playing that out, looking at the past data. And then just for me personally, I feel like I need to understand the fund balance a little bit more. I know, Tim, you were talking about like some stepwise increases, and I didn't necessarily realize that. And so I just need some direction on where to find that information to understand it better.
Right. And as always, board members can email Libby and me with other requests as you for information or pieces of the presentation as they come to you in your sleep, if you'd like. Or, anytime over the next week and a half or so, as Libby's working on developing the next one with Mike and the rest of the team. We did set aside some time for a second public comment in case there were things that members of the public wanted to share after looking at this first glance at a budget. I, again, don't see any members of the public in the room, but I just wanted to see if there's anybody online who has questions or comments after seeing this.
Don't see hands raised.
Okay.
Yeah, can I just say, again, I really think that we've gotten really good information in these budget presentations. I think considering the topic and considering the factors, I feel like Anna and you and Mike and everybody who like put effort into this presentation, like it's great. Like it's really helpful and really useful. And I just really appreciate it because I know a lot of work goes into translating these things into something we can digest. So thank you.
Better and better at it, I think.
Definitely, sure. Definitely. And if folks who are watching have questions and don't feel like you want to ask in the moment, you can always email us, schoolboard@mpsvt.org. That gets to all of us and Libby. So we're happy to answer questions over email as well. Or just stop us on the street as someone did with me today. Great. So I think we're going to move on then to policy monitoring. We have just one policy that we're doing a monitoring report Thanks, everybody. Thanks so much
night.
for being here and following along our fascinating questions and conversation. The policy monitoring, the policy that we are monitoring tonight is B7, tobacco prohibition. Do we have a motion to approve the monitoring report?
Move to approve the tobacco monitoring report.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so I'm going to, I just joined Zoom so that I could be made a panelist or whatever, so I can share my screen. You can do that, Libby. I also think I successfully did it without creating an echo in the room.
Yeah.
Now,
You should be a panelist.
yes, and I have, great. No echo. All right, and I just wanted to share my screen so that we can take a look at the board community engagement options that are available over the coming couple of weeks. And we'd really love to have full board participation, having folks show up at one or two of these. I don't think it's absolutely critical for us to be at every single one of the things on this list, but we would like to inform the community, hey, the board's going to be out at different community spaces over the next couple of weeks as we are developing in the very early stages of developing the budget. And this is a great chance to offer your insights and your thoughts and ask questions. So we have tomorrow night, there's the second grade art and music show at UES. We don't have anybody signed up for that yet, but that's a great opportunity to catch a good group of caregivers. Casey's going to be at the Roxbury Free Library on Saturday, and then we also have the Montpelier Farmers Market on Saturday. Scott and I are signed up for the second shift, which is the later one. I chose that one because my kiddo has a basketball game earlier in the day, and I would like to go to that. So if anybody can take the earlier slot, I think the farmers market would be a great place to engage with lots of folks in the community. We've secured a spot at the Kellogg Hubbard Library on next Wednesday evening in some of their later hours to try to catch some of the after work crowd that's coming through the library. And then anybody who's going to the play and wants to show up a little early and be here to chat with folks as they're arriving and then chat with folks during intermission. I think that's a great time to connect with people from all over the community because we don't just have students and caregivers coming to the place because they're so great. We've got people from all over coming to those. So those are the opportunities. We wanted to give board members a minute to check your schedules and your calendars and see if there's anything you'd be able to sign up for.
Is it a shared document that you sent us?
It is a shared document. Rhett sent it around after the last board meeting, so a couple weeks ago.
Really quickly, we have I don't know, swag's not the right word, but we have like a banner or something like that, right? But so I guess at least for this, where is that normally stored? And if we need to grab it, that kind of thing.
It's in the trunk of my car right now.
Okay.
I brought it with me in case there was somebody I can hand it off to who's gonna be at one of these events.
Wondering about the art and music show tomorrow because it's the same time as practice and I will be dropping off at 6 and picking up at 7. And in between, I don't know if that is actually a good thing
right.
because everybody's watching.
Right.
And that
So that might not
doesn't really work
Yeah.
in a way, but I'm sort of hovering.
Yeah, I think, Scott, I think we'll just do a lot of coordinating amongst each other to hand that off to folks. And we'll also be asking, Libby and Anna can translate some of the slides that we had from this budget presentation into visual aids so that we have something to share with people when we are at these events and we're not just talking in abstracts, but we can say, here's what we know so far. So we'll have all of that. And we will also have brochures to hand out that are information for anybody who's interested in serving on the school board.
Yeah, we have new ones.
We have new ones.
Yeah, we have new ones. Got them like Monday.
Oh, that's great. So we'll have some of those as well, and these are also great opportunities to talk with folks about that. All right, this is looking pretty good. We'll just keep plugging away at it.
Also, maybe potentially reviewing our successes.
What do you mean?
Well, next time we meet, somebody will talk about how successful they were in community connecting.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, I think that is everything. Thanks, everybody, for the signups. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Tim moved by raising his hand.
I'll second.
Jill seconds. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? All right, thanks, everybody. Much appreciated.
I'm gonna try to